Richard, thank you
Yes,
so much for joining me here today at PPIF.
pleasure.
So tell me about the US private placement market. I mean, traditionally, it's a US dollar market. Is that changing at the moment?
Yeah, I think that's a misnomer. People hear the U.S. private placement market or the USPP market, and they think U.S. dollars, and that is a big part of the market overall from U.S. insurance companies who naturally want to provide you dollars. But the private placement market is a global market from an issuer perspective, many of which are global companies that have needs for currencies that go beyond US dollars. So in any given year, about a third of the overall private placement market is non-US dollar currencies. So whether that be sterling, euro, Canadian dollar, or Australian dollar, Swiss franc, there's Japanese yen. So it is a market that is increasingly used by issuers to source non-dollar currencies more efficiently than they can through other market alternatives. So Mizuho has been at the forefront of what we refer to as the swap note market, where issuers are coming to the market looking, for example, for yen. And the private placement market can offer yen in tenors and in pricing that is frequently more advantageous than the yen public market. Mizuho is involved in taking, just this last year, two issuers that had never issued in the private placement market, but they came to the market for non-dollar currency in the form of yen. Those issuers were Berkshire Hathaway Incorporated, the mothership. They raised $1 billion US dollar equivalent in yen in very long dated tenors. We also brought MetLife Incorporated as an issuer to the private placement market, which is very interesting because MetLife is, of course, a big investor, but Met has a large business in Japan and needs yen, so they came to the market for yen.
I mean, that's really exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell me more about the types of structures that are now accepted by the investor side of things?
That's another part, is that historically, the private placement market, because it is longer dated and illiquid, and it's high quality investors that are focused on where they are in the capital structure, it's been senior pari passu with banks. However, as the market's evolving, we are able to do other structures. So the private placement market is increasingly financing at holding company levels that are above assets to finance, for example, a minority stake interest from a sponsor in an underlying asset that's very stable. The market has grown, so there's more investors that have come into the market in recent years, and with that, there's a growing tolerance for different types of structures. Mizuho was involved this last year in doing the first ever hybrid private placement. So that was a syndicated hybrid private placement for Nat Rural CFC as an issuer. And so that was a junior subordinated note structure where the issuer is able to receive equity treatment for the issuance. And so that was the first of the market for a hybrid. And we expect there's going to be more hybrids coming forward in the private placement market.
That's really, really interesting. So tell me about the changes that you've observed in the private placement market investor base, and how will issuers need to adapt to that kind of change?
I think that's a little bit of what I referred to, in that the overall number of investors has really been growing. It started with going back 3 to 5 years ago, a number of investors that had historically only been involved on the public bond investing side have hired teams to get into private credit and are actively now buying private placements. So there's a growing number of overall investors. And then for a number of investors, their capacity has grown through third-party investment management accounts. So there are certain investors that have been able to attract Japanese and Korean insurance money into the private placement through these third-party investment management accounts, corporate pensions coming into the private placement markets. These investors that say the private placement market is a little bit too new for me, but I trust a brand name investor that's been involved in the market for decades, and I'll give them an account to start investing on my behalf. So as a result, there's more liquidity in the private placement market overall.
Very, very exciting. Richard, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you very much.